G'day folks and welcome to another episode of Euro Mining News. Today we're discussing European Green Transition's Olserum rare earth element deposit, which is located in southern Sweden, where the company already has a sizable resource to find in the ground, as well as some considerable exploration upside, with a few rock chip samples showing mineralisation up to 2.5 kilometres along strike. I have with me today the Chief Executive Officer, Aiden Lavelle. Aiden, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, John.
My pleasure, mate. Now, before we get stuck in, can you just give viewers a quick overview of who European Green Transition is and what initially attracted you to rare earth elements in Sweden?
Okay, so European Green Transition is it's a listed company listed on London AIM, and really the objective is to identify and acquire undervalued and distressed assets across the green economy. So that could be metals, it could be also recycling, tailings reprocessing, or even looking at other opportunities in green energy, carbon credits, stuff like that. So it's a sort of an opportunistic company, and we did start out in metals. We were previously European Green Metals, and during the listing process, we changed and broadened our scope to identify other non-metal opportunities and hopefully deliver returns to shareholders.
Absolutely, yeah, I see. So not just this Olserum deposit, you've also got a graphite deposit up in the north of Sweden, and a copper recycling over in Cyprus. So it sounds like you're really jumping onto that green transition kind of trend, which is popular at the moment. Tell us a little bit about your graphite project up in the north and your copper recycling.
Yeah, so the graphite project is one that we staked originally, and it has potential for several million tons of graphite at a fairly high grade. But also there's actually very exciting copper potential there. Anglo American previously drilled 9 holes there, and they intersected copper in most of those holes back in 2000 and 2001. And the drill holes were never followed up, so they had up to 10 meters at 0.5% copper with some high cobalt in some of those. And there's quite strong magnetic anomalies and a few soil anomalies that have never been tested. But what happened was they moved over to Finland and discovered Sakatti and dropped a lot of their projects in North Sweden. So this one was never followed up. So we see an opportunity there for an incoming partner to really test that copper potential, and copper is really hot at the moment. And then in Cyprus, we recently signed an option on a tailings recycling project, and that is at the former Limni mine site, and that was mined from the 30s right through the 70s. It had about 8.1 million tons at 1.1% copper mined there, and in addition there were 2 other deposits nearby which had their the ore processed at the same site. And then in 2010 an EU funded project basically moved all of the tailings back into the pit. So what we have is a backfill pit full of oxidized tailings, and that's actually leaching copper. So we're looking at potential to treat the water that's quite copper rich coming out of that, as well as potentially a more conventional tailings reprocessing. And being in Cyprus, there's excellent sunshine. It's the country in the EU that gets the most solar irradiance. So actually, there's really good solar potential for that. What is essentially a waste ground. So there's a lot of opportunities with that site that we're looking at the moment.
Fantastic. And would this be a early revenue stream potentially for you before you get up and mining with Olserum and your other projects?
Yeah, there's really good potential for early revenue on these projects, and really we're not going to become a mining company ourselves. Our aim is to sort of advance the project and bring in partners and try and monetize them. So we're not going to go down the route of trying to build mines ourselves. We'll leave that for the bigger companies with the big balance sheets and the expertise. Really, we are focused on trying to move assets along, add value, and make a return for the shareholders.
Absolutely, yeah. You stick in your lane. There's far too many explorers who've tried to run the whole 9 yards and gone down. So that's a good strategy. The back to the Olserum deposit, because that really is your main flagship asset, I guess. So they first had a NI 43101 compliant resource put on it back in 2013. That had 4.5 million tonnes indicated at 0.6% total rare earths and 3.3 million tonnes at 0.63% total rare earths using a 0.4% cutoff. How does this grade compare to other projects, especially in Sweden, but in Europe? Like, do you see this being a profitable project?
Well, it's early days. I mean, this project started out as a project that was targeting an anomaly. They drilled it, they intersected rare earths, and they just stepped out 40 meters and ended up with a resource. So I think what we've seen since we acquired the project is if you step back and look at the regional potential, and from our mapping and sampling across the wider area, where Olserum is now is probably ranked 4th or 5th as a drill target if you were to start again. We see a lot of upside and some really good outcropping mineralization in other areas, particularly at Jupiter. So yeah, the grade is I suppose somewhat comparable to Norchar. It's a smaller deposit. It's one of only a handful of rare earth deposits in Europe, but it is monazite and xenotime, and they have a known processing route. So potentially with more exploration and expanding the resource and locating higher grade, this could well be a potential economic project. Again, the infrastructure is really good, and there's a railway within about 500 meters of the deposit. You have a road right to site, you have power. We have a single landowner, which is a commercial forestry company, and we've had very good community relations so far. We had a very well-attended community meeting last September, and that followed up with another one last month in April. And we've actually seen a lot of support for the project from local sort of political representatives. And I think in this area of Sweden, there also is a need for investment. So, the project does have a lot of upside and a lot going for it compared to other projects. And it is a good site for a potential future operation, if the grade and the tonnage can be expanded.
Absolutely. That early stakeholder engagement is so important and not to be overlooked. So that's good to see that you're putting in that work early, and that the Swedish people are keen on it. So as far as since you've acquired the Olserum project, you started off doing some rock chip sampling and some trench sampling just to basically shore it up. What are your next plans? Are you going to roll the drill rig in, and also do you have a permit?
Yeah, so actually what we started out with was re-logging all of the core, because when we first looked at the core during our due diligence phase, we recognized that the mineralization and the exploration model wasn't very well understood. And we identified that there was a foliation and shearing associated with the mineralization, and you got very strong biotite and magnetite alteration around that. So we sort of proposed the shear zone hosted model for the rare earths. And then when we got out to the field, we started mapping and prospecting. We actually were able to back that up and continue outlining sort of mineralization and alteration along the strike of the structures. So that sort of model sort of came together very well, and then that now has led with more rock chip sampling, mapping, ground magnetic surveys, all very low cost work really. We've actually shown that is the correct model to follow, and we found new mineralization, particularly at Jupiter. We now have an 800-meter trend with some very good channel samples that we released very recently, including 3 meters at 1.5%, and another meter then at 2.2%, sort of following on across the same structure. And there's some very strong magnetic anomalies there at Jupiter that have never been drill tested. At Olserum West, about 250 meters from the resource, we found another large zone which has an equivalent footprint to the resource itself.
And that's a sub-parallel shear zone to the main Olserum?
Olserum and Olserum West are probably on the same structure, and then Jupiter is about 2 kilometers northwest, which again is an 800-meter zone. Again, a footprint bigger than Olserum and Olserum West combined. So this is looks like a typical shear zone hosted system where you get chutes and zones developing along the shears. And remember, we're within 10 kilometers of a major crustal scale shear zone, the Linköping Loftahammar deformation zone, which is probably one of the primary controls on why this district has rare earths. So
Absolutely.
yeah, our plan is to bring in the rig. Initially, it's a very short program, 1,500 meters, commencing in the next few months, and that is fully permitted. And that will really test the exploration upside of the new zones that we've discovered. And the idea is then that will hopefully help us bring in a partner to help move the project along. As I said, we don't want to become a miner ourselves. We really want to, advance the project and try and get a return from our shareholders without, the full upfront costs of a larger drill out.
Definitely, definitely. And would your initial drilling be focusing on stepping out and more exploratory drilling, or infilling the resource that currently exists?
Well, we've actually fully permitted the whole program, so we permitted, in excess of 9,000 meters, so we can do a full infill program if we wanted, but that's not our intention. Our initial intention is actually to do the exploration holes at Jupiter, where we have outcropping mineralization and some pretty good results in challenge samples now. So we'll test those with drilling and see, hopefully get proof of concept that the structures are there and get some good grade on those. And also test the Olserum West zone, where we had up to, I think, 14 meters at 0.5% total rare earths just in a single outcrop across that zone. But that zone in itself is about 200 meters long by 80 meters wide, so it's almost equivalent to the resource itself. So there's good upside to increase the resource potential there, and the initial exploration holes will are aimed at showing that.
Fantastic. So you're definitely getting some economic total rare earth element oxide grades. What are your heavy rare earth element ratios, or your neodymium, praseodymium ratios looking like?
Yeah, total neodymium and praseodymium is typically around 20% of the total rare earth oxides. So the value carriers are really the neodymium, praseodymium, and dysprosium. We have a very small bit of terbium. So overall, we see about 30 to 33% heavy rare earth oxide. So that's actually, quite a bit higher than some other rare earth projects globally.
Yeah.
It is encouraging. And if we, in areas like Jupiter, where we see, higher grade, we have samples actually up to 20% in some old magnetite dumps that were worked for iron back in the 1800s, and some spectacular coarse monazite and xenotime. So we actually feel that we sort of know the control on that mineralization now. So Jupiter, the exploration drilling there will test that model, and it'd be nice to intersect some of that in drilling.
Very exciting to be testing a new model. Absolutely. Now, jumping off of the geology side of things and more into the stock market side, you recently listed on the London Stock Exchange just last month, and since then your share price has been on quite a good run, up over 50%. Now, the London Stock Exchange is somewhat of an unloved exchange as far as mineral exploration and mining in recent years. What attracted you to the London Stock Exchange over the ASX, TSX, or any of the Swedish markets?
Yeah, I suppose the company's investors and backers and main shareholders have strong experience working on the London Stock Exchange. They've listed 4 or 5 companies now, and so they're quite comfortable operating there. It is a great market for growth companies. The metals sector has been a bit unloved for the last few years. Exploration has been difficult, but as I said, we're not really going down the well-trodden path of a standard exploration company. We are broadening our horizons to other opportunities, and particularly with a focus on near-term cash-generating opportunities. So I wouldn't say we're a standard exploration companies, but definitely we started out in that field. But our aim is to partner the projects and move them along. But London, I think, will turn. There's signs slowly of a bit of life coming back into the market. There has been a lack of IPOs, but most of the IPOs in the past few months have actually done quite well. So we have performed well, and I hope to keep it on that trend as well moving forward.
Absolutely. So you're saying, as part of your strategy, as not being I guess a typical exploration company, the partnering with other companies, would you be going into it as a JV minority holder, or would you be looking more for a royalty type of payment whilst selling the tenements?
Ideally, get some cash up front and a royalty would be nice. But I think we're open to various deal structures, and we maintain that flexibility. The beauty of a small AIM company is that you can be nimble, you can be fast moving, and you can be fairly flexible as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, on the EU in whole as a whole, the Critical Raw Materials Act recently got implemented, or it's about to be put into law, in an attempt to secure some more domestic supply of rare earths for Europe. Your Olserum project was actually recently declared an area of national interest by SGU, or the Swedish Geological Undersökning, which is the survey. What does this mean for you, and does it allow you any extra kind of upside, I guess?
In May of last year, the SGU designated Olserum a national interest project, which is quite supportive in that it's an independent validation of the project and its importance to society. So it doesn't really give us any extra legal protection or benefits as such. You still have the normal permitting system. You have to jump through the same hoops as every other company for every other project. But at least it is recognized that the project is potentially of value and of use to society and should be protected. So we see that hopefully nobody's going to build houses on top of it. That the national interest designation should protect it. It is just a commercial forestry area anyway. But yeah, the EU Critical Raw Materials Act has finally recognized that Europe needs to secure its own supplies of critical raw materials. Yeah, we still don't have a single rare earths element mine in Europe. So under that legislation, at least 10% of rare earths should be extracted within Europe, and there should also be a lot more recycling and refining in Europe. So the infrastructure is slowly building for the refining and processing in Estonia and Norway and France, but we're still well behind on extraction. So I hopefully there will be support for mining.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for your time there, Aiden. And so I guess next up we'll be looking forward to some drilling starting the second half of this year, and be looking forward to those results.
Yeah, thank you, John. And we'll also be looking at other opportunities as well. So watch out for some news flow around EGT and our other opportunities that we hopefully will be announcing soon.
Great. All right. Talk to you again soon, Aiden. Have a good one.